My first performance, I remember I was 6 or yeah, it must have been 5 because I was in kindergarten. It was, I remember coming into the theater and I remember the smell of the theater. It smelled of pine. But I remember just having this drive to be on stage and to tell a story. And I had the story in my mind about this angel who fell to earth and who was lost. And 2 other angels had to come down and find them to help this angel understand who she was, understand her identity. So I had this story in my head, and I remember finding the courage to ask the teacher, the kindergarten teacher, if I could perform on the stage and tell my story. And she said to ask the principal, and that was really scary because at that time there was paddling in the schools, and our principal he paddled people, and he was a very interesting man. He was a black man called Dr. Vincent, and he had a huge afro and an amazing smell. He had this cologne, you could smell him like, while you're in class, you could smell him coming. And, but anyway, so I remember finding the courage to ask Dr. Vincent if I could do a performance at lunchtime on the stage, and he said yes, you could do it the next lunch period. And so he gave us like a week or so to rehearse, and I remember finding 2 girls, 2 friends of mine, to put together this play, and I told them the story, and it was kind of like a dance, and I did the interpretation, and they did the dancing, the movement part of it. And I remember doing it and putting it on stage at lunchtime, and it was really beautiful. And I remember just feeling so good about being under the lights and having people watch and know the story. I thought it was really important. And yeah, it was interesting. And looking back on it, it came into my mind. I had forgotten all about it, and it came into my mind when I was performing with the Green Circus, and I was at the United Nations, and I was going over my lines. And this was a very important event for me too. I was just so super excited to be performing at the UN. It was like a dream come true. Just being an activist and being able to do theater at the UN was pretty magical. And so here I am, and putting on a story, that was a collaboration, from a lot of people, me included. So we're all writers and everything, costume, everything was all about all of us coming together. So here I am going over my lines, and this thing comes into my head about this story, and I was like, wow, I've been doing this a really long time. And when I think about it now, I just think about how driven I was and how guided I was to do this. I was a shy child, and it took so much courage to pull it off, just courage within to do it and to tell the story. And I felt guided when I was doing it because it was absolutely, incredibly a wild thing for me to do. And I also weren't religious. I mean, we went to church maybe, Easter and Christmas, or probably just Easter. And when we went to church, I didn't really like going to church. I didn't like, my father was Catholic, my mother was Baptist, and I really didn't like the vibe in either church. I went to both of them, and I didn't really like the vibe. So it was interesting. The story that I would tell would be about angels. And yeah, so that was the beginning of a very long path, beautiful journey.